everyone. Thank you so much for joining us, and welcome to the 9th annual 3-Minute Paper Competition. It's our return to an in-person event in the Gym Theater, and we felt like it was important to start on time, considering this is an event that is all based on time. My name is Erin Sordees. I'm an academic skills instructor here at Trent and one of the organizers of this event. I'm also tonight's host. I want to thank you for joining us this evening. I first wish to respectfully acknowledge that we are on the treaty and traditional territory of the Mississauga Anishinaabe. We offer our gratitude to the First Peoples for their care for and teachings about our earth and our relations. May we honor those teachings. And we're gathered here today in the main building, a place that takes its meaning from Anishinaabe, that means the way we speak together. So we're really grateful that tonight we can come together to share ideas and stories from the Gym Theater and the First Peoples House of Learning. I now ask you to join me in welcoming Marilyn Burns, Vice President of Enrollment and Communications, to the podium for introductory remarks.
Thank you so much, Erin. And what a wonderful way to acknowledge the land. Thank you for doing that so well. Good evening, everyone. I'm very happy to be here tonight to welcome all of you, and I gather many people online too, as we're live streaming tonight, to, as Erin said, No Gym Theater and the 3-Minute Paper. I'm just going to say, prepare to be amazed. This is a really exciting event, and it is a tradition that started at Trent. It's uniquely Trent. It is built on the 3-Minute Thesis, which is a graduate level competition, but the 3-Minute Paper is at the undergraduate level. And I think what amazes us every year is the quality of the presentations that we see, the complexity, and the extent to which months and months of research can be boiled down into 180 seconds. I must say that we do have a very interdisciplinary group here tonight. We have 14 presenters from a range of disciplines, including psychology, child and youth studies, forensic science, anthropology, biology, and social work, and more. This is a real example of all of the wonderful things that Trent offers. And I'm happy to say that much of this emanates from the collegiate system that is a big part of the Trent identity. And I want to thank colleges, academic skills, and all who have contributed to tonight's event, including communications who are live streaming. Thank you very much. And I wanted to mention as well how interdisciplinary our judging panel is tonight. So I'd like to have the pleasure of introducing you to our judges. I do not envy them at all. I have been in their seats before, and it's a tough place to be as well. We have representing both campuses. I'll start with our provost and vice president academic, Michael Kahn. Michael is a kinesiologist and health and behavior expert, and years of experience he brings to the room today. And I would say about Michael, he is a very kind person, but he's quite exacting too, so he'll be watching for detail. Sean Lockwood is the Assistant Director, Research Support in the Office of Research and Innovation. He's an archaeologist, and his multidisciplinary research takes place in places like Turkey. So some really great background coming here tonight from the research office. And then Carlene Pendleton-Jimenez is our acting associate dean from Durham GTA campus and a professor in education and gender studies and social justice. She's a filmmaker, she's a writer, she's a scholar, she's an educator, and you can pick up her books and films and just a wide range of things that she has published. It's very impressive work. So it's nice to have both campuses here, such a wide range of disciplines represented. And I'll just say, I consider all of us very lucky to be here tonight, and I want to thank mostly the students for your courage and your commitment that you are showing by being here tonight. We really support you in your work, and we hope that you'll see that. We're rooting for you here tonight and wish you all very well. Have a great experience. And thank you very much for the opportunity to be here as well.
Thank you so much for starting us off, Marilyn. I want to echo all of your sentiments about what an exciting event this is.
Do you have audio?
It's been a few years since we got to do this in person, and it's wonderful to perhaps the different kind of pressure that we have when we record ourselves. We get to see audience reaction. We also get to hear it, and I think that that's really exciting because we get to hear the applause in the video versions. And yes, so I expect us all to be really supportive and loud and helping people know that we've appreciated what they had to say. So I will remind folks that, if you didn't get a chance to tell someone that this is being live streamed, you can let them know. It's on trentu.ca/3mp. They can find it there. We've got a really exciting night. As Marilyn mentioned, the 3-minute paper was inspired by this international graduate level competition called 3-minute Thesis. And that was developed at the University of Queensland 15 years ago. And it still is a popular graduate level competition at universities all over the globe. And this is where grad students have to distill their years of research into a brief 3-minute talk that is both accessible and engaging. Trent is hosting its own 3MT again this year on April 13th, so I invite you all to join us there. But we know that grad students aren't the only developing scholars on campus. 3MP provides undergraduates a chance to share their work, refine their presentation skills, and feel the pressure and excitement of explaining the relevance of their specialized concepts to a general audience. Tonight marks our 9th annual competition, and over the years, we've seen 3MP champs on the 3MT stage at Trent. In fact, last year's 3MP winner will be competing in Trent's 3MT grad event next month. So perhaps we'll see one of you there next year as well. So I think we're an audience of some really impressive students. You have, as undergraduate students, really amazing opportunities to conduct research. As you know, you've been doing it. It might not feel that amazing right now. It feels like a lot of work, a lot of time, maybe a lot of pressure. You're wishing you were further ahead than you were right now. But we get to hear about the months of lab work, reading, field study, data analysis, deep thinking that you've been doing. It's months of work. We're hearing about it in 3 minutes, and that's it. And that's evidence of critical thinking and communication skills are required to make highly specialized research meaningful to folks like us who might not know much about biology or child and youth studies or psychology. So the presenters have to explain the foundational concepts of their research, avoiding that highly specialized terminology that's kind of our comfort zone, and create a meaningful storyline about your research and its value. And these are the same essential skills that employers demand of their graduates. And I think over the past few years, we've learned how important that is to have clear communication of complex ideas as we've navigated a lot of changes in our world as well. So tonight's presenters are really enthusiastic about their research. They don't really need much incentive to participate in this challenge. They're representing their college or campus community and their academic departments, as Marilyn told us. But this isn't just about departmental or college pride. We've got some prizes that add to the excitement. So we have our overall prize that is sponsored by the Office of Research and Innovation. We have our first runner-up prize sponsored by Alumni Services Engagement. We have the second runner-up prize. These are all based on top scores, the top 3 scores. The top 3 scoring presentations will also have their 3MP talk published in the Journal of Undergraduate Studies, a new prize sponsor for undergraduate studies. We also sponsored a new prize called the Justice Prize, and that will go to a top that has a top score that is focused on equity and social justice that has not won in the top 3 awards. In addition, we have a Best Visuals prize because the slides and visual aids are such an integral component of this talk. And we have the Audience Choice Prize. That means you folks get to vote for your favorite as well, and you get to award a student based on that. Because it's a competition, we have to be a little bit, sticky on the rules. Number one, pretty obvious, we have 3 minutes. That's it. There's a timer at the front of the room here, and my colleagues are ready to let people know if they're getting close to their time. So the students can see that time ticking down. If they get to 0, we've told them they can say thank you and be seated. Or if you think, I just need to tell the world this research, and I don't care how long it takes, you help yourself. That will exclude you from winning a prize, okay? But I know I have lots to say, sometimes I like to go. We can't get any songs or spoken word poetry. These are just presentations. We must stick to the stage. We've got to use no more than 3 slides. The slides have to be static. We can't have fun transitions, no star wipes, nothing like that, okay? You are allowed to use cue cards or notes. Because sometimes that's just nice to have. We all have them. I'm clearly using mine right now. And finally, the decisions of our judging panel are final. And I'll remind folks that we've got a fantastic judging panel here this evening that have a really difficult task ahead. They are working off of 4 equally weighted criteria that they're scoring the students' presentations on tonight. They're looking at language and communication. So was the research and its significance communicated in a language appropriate to an intelligent, we're all intelligent, but non-specialist audience? Did it demonstrate knowledge and understanding? So did the presentation help the audience understand the complexity of the research? Engagement. Does the presentation make us want to know more and help us really understand why it's so valuable? And finally, visual aids. Are the PowerPoint slides visually interesting illustrations of key ideas in the presentation? Do they complement rather than compete with the talk? These are the criteria the judges will be looking for. These are the criteria I ask you to consider as you vote for your favorite presentation this evening. So we'll get started in a moment. I will ask you to silence your phones for the duration of the event. I'll also ask that if you need to exit for any reason, please wait until the end of a presentation and leave your seat between speakers. If you choose to take any photographs of someone that you're supporting and super excited to see, please do so, but make sure that your flash is off because we don't want to be blinding anyone at all. So now that we've attended to the details, we're getting folks set up. You'll note that we'll have a small pause between presenters. That gives us a little time to shift between talks. It allows the judges a little time to kind of contemplate their difficult challenge of scoring folks as well. All right. And it's not an easy task to be the first presenter at an event like this. So I think we should really be excited for Rebecca Curry from Durham GTA campus studying child and youth studies. Rebecca's title is Youth Diversion, Escaping Formal Justice Sanctions.
Imagine you're 15, you have just shoplifted and the police catch you. The police can either charge you and you have to go through the court process, or they can give you diversion and you could do a community program such as shoplifting prevention. What would you rather be given? Canada's Youth Criminal Justice Act applies to young people between the ages of 12 to 17. One of the main goals of this act is to treat less serious offenders differently than more serious offenders, while also understanding that young people make mistakes. This is primarily achieved through youth diversion, which occurs when a young person engages in that community programming to avoid those formal justice consequences. Intrigued by this issue, I conducted a literature review to understand the realities of youth diversion. I examined many scholarly studies and great literature based on my research question of what are some of the benefits and critiques to youth diversion and what can be done to support these youth. Young people are spontaneous and greatly influenced by their peers. Think about when you were a teenager. Did you ever do something just because your friends did? When a less serious offense occurs, diversion is beneficial as the youth can avoid being labeled as a criminal. This is important because they avoid trying to live out those stereotypical characteristics associated with the label. Additionally, a young person doesn't receive an official record when they successfully complete diversion. This is beneficial as they then avoid the stigma and barriers that they may experience in future education and employment opportunities. And as much as there are many benefits to diversion, it's also crucial that we examine the critiques. The Youth Criminal Justice Act says that police should give diversion when possible. But the issue here is that police still get to decide and their bias can come through. With this, police discretion can lead to a lot of inconsistencies with deciding which youth get diversion and which don't. Inconsistencies here can also occur between regions. As much as the Youth Criminal Justice Act is a federal policy, the reality is that the programs offered to youth differ from Vancouver to Halifax and everywhere in between. And so although research points to the benefits and critiques I just discussed, there's actually so much about the diversion process that we don't know. Despite the fact that many young people receive diversion, little research exists on how it actually works in practice. In my 3 minutes here, I have argued that diversion is beneficial. It benefits youth not only in the present, but also in the future. I want you to think back and imagine you are that 15-year-old who is caught shoplifting. By being given diversion, you can avoid the formal justice consequences of being charged. You receive no official record, and you stay connected to your community. Wouldn't you prefer that? Thank you.
Well done, Rebecca. It's not easy going first, and you went through that like a pro, even though the mic was being a little bit funny. We all heard you, and you were fantastic, so thank you so much. And you were making me reflect on the poor choices and the pressure that I experienced as a teenager, and the bangs I had, they were a crime, and I'm so glad that I don't have to live through that, and have that following me for my entire life. So thank you so much for teaching us something today about this act. Next up, I'll introduce Brogan Dow, Autonomy College student studying psychology. Brogan's title, Where Do We Keep Our Memories? Examining the role of the hippocampus in memory storage.
So where are our memories stored? Is there a place that you could look and point to in the brain that would represent like your first day of university? Or maybe a trip you took with your family when you were younger? Well, if you could, the first place we should look is the hippocampus. On the slide here, I have 2 sections of a rat's brain, and it's dyed purple to show the hippocampus. Those are the dark lines. And the hippocampus is a curved structure, kind of shaped like 2 bananas that goes backwards in the brain. So the top slide shows a more forward part of the brain where you can see the top of the banana, and then if you move further back in the brain, you see the lower part. So we know that the hippocampus is involved in memory because when we damage the hippocampus, we get impairments in memory. This happened with some famous human case studies such as patient HM. So when we see this in rats with a specific type of memory called context memory. So this is just our memory of a certain environment or context. And when we destroy the hippocampus in a rat, we destroy the memory of the context. So we assume that the memory is stored inside the hippocampus. Except when we damage the hippocampus, we're inadvertently causing seizures to happen in the rat's brain. That's what I've shown by this yellow here. So it's possible that the memory could actually be stored outside the hippocampus, and we're just disrupting it with these seizures. So we need a way to study the hippocampus that doesn't involve seizures. So one way we can do this is called temporary inactivation. So we can actually inject a local anesthetic into the hippocampus of a rat while it's awake, and it will shut off the hippocampus temporarily. So I did this with a group of rats. And I found that, shown in the red there, I found that they were no more impaired in the memory than a control group that was in that group. So this could be because the memory is in fact stored outside the hippocampus, and that the seizures are just using it. Or it could be because maybe we're not reaching enough of the hippocampus with the inactivation. Some of the lower parts of the hippocampus are actually harder to reach with these injections. So my study aims to address this issue. So we're going to have two groups of rats, and we're going to destroy the bottom parts of the hippocampus that are harder to reach with these inactivations. And then we're going to inactivate the rest of the hippocampus, only one group. Now both groups are going to get seizures, so if it is the seizures, they should be the exact same. But if the memory is in the hippocampus, then we will see greater impairment in memory with the inactivated group. And this should help us answer the question of where our memory is stored in the hippocampus.
Thank you. Interesting. Okay.
Thank you, Brogan. I'm hoping that that's going to help me understand why, with my age kind of advancing, that my memories and my storage facility is struggling, I think. So you've helped me to kind of think that through a little bit. I appreciate that. All right. Next up, we have Rachel Willis, a Durham GTA student studying child and youth studies. Rachel's title, Education with a View, Implementing the Outdoors into Learning.
How are children and young people doing in Canada? Well, according to an organization called Children First Canada, they are not doing well. Mental health is one of the most significant threats that children and youth face today. In fact, the mental health of children and youth has been declining significantly over the past decade. Now, I want you all to take a minute. Think back to when you were in elementary school. Aside from recess, how much time did you spend outside? How many science lessons were outside, picking up leaves, observing birds, or looking at insects? Now think of the hours you spent inside a classroom. The reality is, this was just so much more than your time outside. But why should we care? Well, research demonstrates that one of the ways to face this is through outdoor education. We need to get our children and youth outside. Now, what is outdoor education? It's taking children and youth having experiential learning into the outdoor natural environment. And it can range from walks in the park to overnight camp trips to day trips. Now, outdoor education is commonly used in Australia and New Zealand, but here in Ontario, the funding isn't very high for it. Specifically, in the Durham region, they do have funding for outdoor education, but it's not enough to sustain all students, and they're only able to give each school a small percentage of their population with just a few field trips. It's not enough for all students to reap the benefits. As part of a fourth-year major research paper, I've reviewed the academic literature, and this is what I found. First, outdoor education has the potential to address something called nature deficit disorder. This happens as a result of children spending too much time outdoors, and it's linked with emotional and behavioral damage. This can be seen as stress, frustration, anger, poor management, and more. In one study, researchers took children suffering with nature deficit disorder to an outdoor overnight camp. They found that 84% of their participants were more relaxed during their time at this camp and after. Next, the curriculum can be infused into outdoor education while still amplifying their mental health. Specifically, a study based in Australia found that 65% of children and youth not only had positive mental health outcomes from this, but they also had better academic outcomes. My research has clearly stated the incredible potential that outdoor education has and to improve the mental well-being of children. So let me ask you this. Wouldn't your educational experience have been so much better with a view? Thank you.
Rachel might have convinced me that we should do next year's competition outside.
Yep.
In Australia, wouldn't that be lovely? Yes. We'll get the grant application going now. Our next speaker is Anna Dixon, an Autonomy College student studying forensic science and anthropology. Anna's title, Flesh versus Bones, Comparing Methods when Excavating Commingled Remains.
Commingled remains have been excavated in a variety of events, like 9/11, Air India Flight 182, and more recently here in Canada with residential schools. Now, commingled remains can be defined as the intermixing of elements of two or more individuals into a single archaeological or forensic context, and this can occur either naturally or through cultural practices. And due to the complexity of these remains, this can have an effect on how these sites are examined. Now, generally speaking, there are a variety of individuals that can examine these sites. However, if the remains are considered more recent or not reaching the point of decomposition, this would be the role of the forensic anthropologist. Whereas if the remains are historic or ancient and possibly reaching the point of skeletonization, this would be the job of the bioarchaeologist to excavate. Now, today I will be discussing with you my thesis, which consists of the comparing and contrasting of methodologies used by bioarchaeologists and forensic anthropologists, specifically when excavating commingled human remains, in the hopes to determine whether there is any potential overlap present within these two disciplines. Why is this relevant, you may ask? Well, as previously stated, worldwide events like 9/11, Air India Flight 182, and the residential school unmarked graves are worldwide events and are historic and part of our everyday conversations. So my journey began last summer as I had the wonderful opportunity to travel to Belize and excavate at Kakabish, which you can see in the photo here. During this time, I had a true passion for the processes of excavation, and upon returning home, I decided to conduct a literature review. And I quickly found that there was a large void with this research. Due to this and my overall interest in the topic, I was inspired to go beyond just the literature and began conducting interviews with professionals in both of these disciplines. Now, although this research is still ongoing, some preliminary findings have been true to my hypothesis, and that is that there are in fact similarities between these two disciplines. This is a positive attribute as it can allow for strong collaboration between these two fields, which can help ensure that the two disciplines are working together on these complex scenes. This also can assist in limiting the void in the literature, can provide opportunities for future research to occur, and of course, with a better understanding, the hope that our training for these individuals can be improved and enhanced to help ensure that new methods and techniques are composed so that reliable data is being collected at these scenes to withstand in a court of law. Overall, the main purpose of this is to ensure that individuals involved in these mass disasters get the justice that they deserve, and as we as a society can learn from our historical mistakes. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Anna. It's fascinating when we can move from a field experience into a complete, that sparked a project and got you excited. And that's what research is. We get sparked by an idea and we want to examine and learn more. So thank you for sharing. Our next speaker is Sebastian Cockridge. He's a Champlain student studying biology, health sciences. His topic, monitoring cardiovascular disease in Métis citizens of Ontario.
All right, so who are the Métis? What does that mean? Sounds French. Métis are one of 3 indigenous groups in Canada, the others being Inuit and First Nations people. And here, there's a picture of me fishing, as you can see, on my traditional territory. I'm standing here proud in my Métis garb. I'm Métis, and this is why it's connecting to my culture and why I'm interested in researching what I'm researching. But what am I researching? First of all, a little bit about Métis. Métis are one of the fastest growing indigenous populations in Ontario. As you can see, between November 2020 to 2022, we've got almost an 8,000 population increase. That's crazy. And why am I showing pictures of me fishing? And why am I showing you pictures of this bead work? Well, this study means so much to me. And I wanted to share with you a little bit about that before I get into cardiovascular disease. So in the top right, there's a lighthouse. My great-grandfather, William, he worked at that lighthouse on the Northern Bay community. Cool. He died of heart disease. Not so cool. But just another way in which my community is connected, and why this is important to Métis, because here in the last 10 years, we've not had any health research on heart disease, not had any research on many diseases in the population. The last study over 10 years ago showed that Métis citizens in Ontario had a greater incidence of many of the diseases that you see on the board there. And I want to continue that research and provide more recent data to say, with this fast-growing population, how can we make sure that health concerns are being met? How can we ensure that if we are getting this boom in the population, how can we see how many people have disease if we're not accurately representing those numbers? And I'm going to be tying that to socioeconomic status to see, is lower income associated with that? How I'll be doing that, Métis Nation of Ontario data, it's my government. I'll be linking that to Ontario health card numbers, and not actually. And then we'll be able to display how many people in Ontario between 2012 and 2022 had congestive heart failure and hypertension. And I'll be able to reflect my community needs, and also just really look forward to doing research that's related to the most recent and up-to-date information on my community. Thank you.
I think Sebastian showing us how research is personal, right? And I think that makes it really powerful as well. So thank you for sharing the lighthouse in your bead work and your fishing pictures. You're welcome. Next up, we'll invite Julia Coppa, a Durham GTA student from Cheltenham Youth Studies. Her topic, I feel blue. What should I do? Mental health literacy in the education system.
Have you ever had that unexplainable, overwhelming feeling while at school that you just struggle to put into words? Well, research has shown that if both teachers and students have access to the vocabulary to explain those feelings, they will have overall better well-being. The key to personal development in school is mental health literacy. Mental health literacy can be defined as the overall teachings of mental health in terms of understanding the explanation to the different vocabulary to the feelings, as well as recognizing mental health symptoms in oneself and others in order to assist with the prevention of and coping with mental health symptoms. I believe that every student should feel comfortable enough to seek mental health supports while at school, or at the very least, understand what mental health is. The academic literature indicates that teachers lack confidence in their abilities to effectively incorporate mental health literacy into their schools. So I set out to find out why. Why do teachers feel as if they cannot incorporate this essential life skill into their classrooms? And in turn, why do students feel as if they cannot seek help in an environment where they spend so much time in? I conducted a review of international scholarly literature within the field of child studies and education. I examined the research on both teachers and students' levels of mental health literacy and the impact this has on students' school experiences. I used only primary sources with varying methodologies, including qualitative interviews, to ensure the voices of those being directly impacted are being heard. Since the research showed that teachers lack confidence in mental health literacy, how can they be expected to help students and teach on the topic if they are not being provided with the resources to do so? Research has shown that teachers who are given mental health literacy training prior to having their own classroom experiences are more effective in correctly identifying mental health symptoms in their students, which in turn creates a better learning environment for all. So now that we understand teachers, let's shift our focus to how this impacts students. School-age students are especially vulnerable to the opinions of others and the stigma they may face while at school. The research suggests that students who face stigma begin to associate negative feelings with school, which leads to feelings of isolation and an underutilization of resources that are already scarce to begin with. To address this, research has shown that students who are placed in classrooms with teachers who are able to implement mental health literacy teachings into their classes and provide opportunities to acknowledge stigma will ultimately create a more inclusive learning environment for all, which in turn will increase mental health literacy and overall well-being. So the next time that you have that overwhelming feeling with mental health literacy, you may be able to put it into words and then receive the help that you deserve.
We've had such a range of research that we've been exposed to, and we're only getting to our seventh speaker of the evening. So I think that's given us such a good taste of what we're going to continue to hear this evening. Thanks to the first six that have gone so far. I know it's not easy, but you're doing great. And we are, I think we're learning so much already. So thank you, Julia. That was fantastic. Our next speaker is Lakshika Bansal, a lady and college student studying biology. Lakshika's title, Decoding the Link Between Stressors and Thyroid Hormone Levels in Tadpoles.
Everyone is affected by stress, and different organisms have definitely different responses to stress. So in my study, we observed that when tadpoles, which were the little bit chlamydin tadpoles, they were exposed to their predators, which was dragonfly nymphs. So they showed an increase in their tail depth, and this increase was an adaptation to the stress response that they had. And then we observed that there are some neuroendocrine changes that are causing this increase in their tail depth. So we observed that corticosterone, which is a stress hormone, was on an increase, and this led to an increase in the tail depth. But previous research has shown that a product of the HPI axis, which is the stress axis, is CRH, which works in correlation with the HPT axis, which is the thyroid hormone axis. So we observed that the CRH is leading to an increase in CORT, but it is also leading to a decrease in T3. And hence we tried to observe what might be responsible for this increase in tail depth. We know it's CORT, but then it could be T3 as well. So we tried to examine if T3 is also affecting the tail depth of the organism, and in this way we could understand how different pathways are correlated. So for my research, we collected some tadpole samples, and then these were collected from the Trent University area. As of now, we have quantified the amount of protein, that is the total protein in the tadpole sample. But now the next step is to quantify the T3. And this T3 will help us in understanding how tadpoles are affected when they are exposed to different predatory cues. It could be visual, it could be olfactory, or it could be visual or olfactory. So I haven't received my results yet, and the amazing thing is that I'll be performing my first ELISA test tomorrow. So I'm expecting some exciting results tomorrow, but I'm not really sure what I'm going to get tomorrow. But my expected results are that because of the CORT-mediated effects, T3 would be less in visual and olfactory cues as compared to only visual and olfactory cues. And so I believe that this study for future will not only help in understanding the conservation efforts for the organism, but it will also help in understanding different pathways and how hormone imbalance can affect the human health. Thank you.
I think we need to do a follow-up in a month. Everybody come back, and that way we can hear how it goes tomorrow, right? Again, research takes time. There's a lot of steps. So for many of the students, it's the peak of their term, so many things happening with all their other courses, and they continue to work on these major research projects or theses, doing lab work. And then they took the time out of their busy schedules to do this as well. So thank you so much for sharing that information. And again, all of you for taking the time to share your research. It's fascinating. All right, our next candidate is Desiree Quinlan, an Autonomy College student studying psychology. Desiree's title is Same as It Ever Was, Outcomes of Attachment Concordance in Adulthood.
Attachment researchers work to understand why certain attachment factors may lead to positive or negative life outcomes. The cumulative risk hypothesis suggests that attachment hierarchies with multiple insecure relationships are associated with more negative outcomes, such as depression and loneliness, and less positive effects, such as optimism, self-esteem, and life satisfaction. Bowlby proposed that individuals develop attachment style based on early experiences with their parents. It's well established that secure attachment is associated with positive life outcomes and insecurity is associated with increased stress. Still, there's little work examining the effects of similar or dissimilar attachment models across relationships. I tested two hypotheses in my thesis that individuals who reported secure attachment with one, their mother and father, and two, their friends and romantic partner, would report higher levels of positive outcomes and lower levels of distress. Data from two pre-existing studies conducted by Dr. Starr were examined, one in person and one online. I also plan to examine data from two additional studies. A multitude of scales were used to assess attachment relationships, distress, and positive outcomes. I conducted statistical analyses on the data to compare concordance for mother versus father and friend versus romantic partner, and to test the differences between the secure-insecure, and insecure groups for parents and peers separately. This study examines a beneficial topic that has not been investigated before, the effects of attachment concordance between an individual's relationships in adulthood. The hypotheses were supported by the in-person data. The secure group reported better outcomes and less distress than the insecure group, and the secure group was somewhere in the middle. I'm currently examining the data from the other studies and expect to find similar results. The findings support the cumulative risk hypothesis. Attachment hierarchies with multiple insecure relationships were associated with more negative outcomes and more positive outcomes. Less positive outcomes. This will likely have clinical significance in therapy and individuals' personal lives by giving insight into how similar or different attachment styles across relationships may affect life outcomes such as self-esteem, and how therapists may approach treatment for mental health problems such as depression.
Thank you, Desiree, for helping us really understand the power of our relationships and that it doesn't always have to be about family. It can be chosen family as well, right? So I think that that's really powerful message that I'm taking away from your talk. Our next speaker is Dia Shah, an Etobicoke College student studying biology. Her topic, to be or not to be, CR-HR2 in stress response.
Very last minute title. So organisms in nature have the ability to change their physical features or their phenotypes based on, for example, predators or any other stressors in order to survive. One such example is tadpoles right here. So tadpoles have the ability to either increase their tail size or develop deeper tail muscles in order to swim away faster and therefore evade their predator. Now, while these physical changes are very well understood and researched, the real mystery is the underlying neural pathways or the underlying internal processes, specifically in the brains of the tadpoles. So when a tadpole either sees or smells a predator, it activates something known in the brain as the stress response. Very similar to the response activated in mine when I realized an assignment's due tonight at 11:59 p.m. It's true. So when the stress response is activated, it essentially is led or conducted by the corticotropin releasing hormone, which helps release cortisol, which is our stress hormone, and which therefore conducts these physical changes. Now, this hormone is led by two of its receptors, CRHR1 and CRHR2. Both of these help the stress response, but their functions are not very well known, specifically that of the CRHR2. And therefore, I wanted to look at the expression of CRHR2 in tadpole brains in order to see if they did have a bigger role in stress response, and then help establish the link between these physical changes as well as changes that happen inside of our bodies. Because if we look at tadpoles, ultimately one day we can also look at humans. So with my current research, I took tadpole brains that were exposed to these stressors, so they could either see a predator or they could either smell a predator, and they were essentially euthanized and then put in blocks of waxes, which then I microtomed, which is a very fancy word for saying I sliced them really, really thin. I sliced them thin in 5 micrometer size, which is 20 times thinner than a piece of paper, like a sheet of paper, so you can imagine how thin that is. And then once I did that, I essentially put them in the CRHR2 antibody. So the function of an antibody is to be able to bind to a protein or molecule, so that's what it did, and then I stained it. So if you see that light brown shade there, that's the staining right there. I am currently in the experimental stages of this project because it's hard to find the right amount of antibody and the amount of time you need to utilize, and science is hard. However, I do realize that there is a role that this particular receptor plays in the stress response of tadpoles, and it's important to research it further because one day it can help us establish a link between environmental changes or physical changes in tadpoles and then ultimately other organisms and humans. Thank you.
I'm curious if we get this physiological change of being able to type faster, move our eyes more quickly, reading the text when we experience that, something's due at midnight kind of stress. I hope we can eventually get to that point of research. And I had no idea how much amazing animal research is happening on this campus. And so, hearing about the rats and the tadpole, this is really opening my eyes to this area that I'm not that familiar with. So thank you. This is really interesting. All right. Our next speaker is Leah Steinke, a Sosky College student studying psychology. Her title, Why It's More Than Just a Concussion.
Hello, everyone. I cannot count the number of times I've heard someone say, oh, it's just a concussion. And they're so incredibly nonchalant about it, like, oh yes, you just had a mild traumatic brain injury. No biggie. Well, I want to introduce you to our research and explain why it's more than just a concussion. So a concussion occurs because of a direct or indirect blow to the head that causes the rapid movement of the brain. And this movement can cause the brain to collide with the skull and potentially damage brain cells. So concussions have the ability to impact us in a variety of ways. For example, abnormal eye movements and executive function difficulties are really common. Executive function difficulties may present as issues with planning, organizing, initiating, and inhibiting our behaviors. So we want to know whether these issues with executive functioning are affecting people's eye movements. To do so, we use this eye tracking device and we perform tests that ask a participant to look at a presented stimulus or to inhibit themselves from looking at a presented stimulus, instead looking to the mirrored location of a stimulus. And we also have a test that presents a stimulus that moves in a smooth, dynamic pattern that the participant has to track using only their eyes. So these tests allow us to assess the speed as well as the accuracy of people's eye movements, as well as their ability to initiate, inhibit, and plan their behaviors. So we expect to find that people who have sustained a concussion perform slow and inaccurate eye movements. We also expect there to be a relationship between these eye movements and their executive function. We believe that it's important to know if people who have sustained a concussion have fully recovered before they return to their regular activities. And identifying these relationships will help us to achieve this. This data will help to develop the necessary tools and protocols to help guide proper concussion recovery. So, sorry. So it is important to be patient with people who have experienced a concussion. It's not just something you can brush off, and it deserves our attention. So the next time you hear someone say, "Oh, it's just a concussion," know that it's a lot more than that. Thank you.
Thank you, Leah. And I think that was a good job. You modeled the special eyewear that you had for the lab work as well in your slides. And I'm appreciating everyone's different approaches to preparation and thinking about, I can see how some folks are, saying, I just know this material, I'm going to talk about it. And I'm seeing other folks that, are like, I'm going to have the notes just in case. And the just in case is a good idea. Because sometimes we might know it and then we just have a moment, and it happens to me more often than I wish to admit. So everyone's doing a great job. Just keep it on. So I'm so impressed. You're fantastic. Thank you. All right. Our next student is Abby Polateski, a Lady Eaton College student studying biology. The title, Cardiac Cachexia. Do females do it better?
Not very many people are familiar with the term cachexia. However, approximately 10% of heart failure patients experience cardiac cachexia, which is the wasting of skeletal muscle and often fat tissue. This leads to significant impacts on quality of life, as patients are often frail and unable to engage in daily activities. In severe cases, they may even be bedridden. Also, patients with cardiac cachexia have a higher mortality rate, meaning that once cachexia develops, the risk of death increases significantly. It has been estimated that cardiac cachexia patients have an 18-month mortality rate of 50%. This means that upon receiving the diagnosis, 50% of patients will be dead within 18 months. With an aging population, we're seeing more cases of heart problems and in turn, more cases of cardiac cachexia as well. This condition is very understudied and there's a lot we have yet to understand. Now, we all know males and females are very different, am I right, ladies? Well, heart failure is no exception. Chronic heart failure is a progressive condition that impacts the filling and pumping of the heart. Now, typically, women tend to have a better clinical outcome than men when it comes to heart failure. Now we see these differences in muscle fiber type as well. The muscle fiber type that men typically have more of tend to waste first during these chronic inflammatory conditions, such as cardiac cachexia. So we see these differences in heart failure, we see them in muscle fiber type. Well, what about cardiac cachexia? This is where the research gap lies, and this is why I wanted to know, what are the sex-based effects on muscle induced by cardiac cachexia? You might be wondering how we can test this. Well, we can use a mouse model. A drug called monocrotaline can be used to induce heart failure in rodents. So this is exactly what we did. We injected mice with monocrotaline, or left some as controls, weekly for a period of 8 weeks. Following this, I conducted a treadmill fatigue test using this treadmill right here. So the objective of this test is for mice to run as long as they can before becoming fatigued, at which point I remove them from the test. Following this test, we euthanized the mice and collected the heart and hind limb muscles. Following this, I embedded these tissues in paraffin wax, seen in these blocks here, and began microtoming them or slicing them super thin onto microscope slides where I can then examine them. This project has been such a learning curve for me, and it's been such a great experience helping to further the field in cardiac cachexia research. I'm expecting to see worse effects in the male mice. However, I'm still doing my data analysis process, but I will find out, do females do it better?
Abby and I really worked on my pronunciation of cachexia, and I still don't think I have it right, but I really tried, Abby. I really tried. Folks, if you're following along in our program, you know we've had a couple of folks withdraw from the competition, so we're moving on to our next speaker, and that is Rhiannon Warwick, a lady and college student studying social work. And Rhiannon's title is Beyond Compliance: Trauma in Intellectual Developmental Disability.
Okay, it's a good time. Millions of Canadians live with intellectual and developmental disabilities, or IDD. Examples include Down syndrome, fetal alcohol syndromes, and autism. People with IDD experience significantly higher rates of abuse, mistreatment, and other adverse life events than non-disabled people. Data also indicates that these people may be more likely to experience lasting psychological impacts following these events. Despite the prevalence and seriousness of trauma in people with intellectual and developmental disabilities, it is often neglected by professionals in the field. I conducted an interdisciplinary literature review investigating factors behind this neglect and exploring emerging best practices for addressing trauma in people with IDD. In institutional settings that kept people with disabilities out of sight and out of mind for the past 150 years, residents were frequently abused and treated as less than human. Any limited therapeutic work was focused on trying to cure or improve people's disabilities, with little or no attention paid to underlying or co-occurring issues or to their internal experiences at all. The primary focus was behavioral modification, meaning that the goal was less for residents to be well than it was for them to be well behaved. The emphasis was on compliance, an emphasis that persists around people with IDD to this day. Compliance-based practice disrespects people's autonomy, their humanity, and fails to acknowledge behavior as communication, which is particularly dangerous for traumatized clients whose behavior may be related to their trauma. Imagine going to the hospital, crying in pain from a broken leg, and being treated as though you're crying, not your injury or your pain is the problem. A doctor whose goal is to get you to stop crying will not help you heal. If practitioners fail to see clients with disabilities as whole, complex people, we will fail to see or address their trauma. Dehumanization and discrimination against people with IDD are deeply entrenched in medical and therapeutic systems, but people with IDD are capable of participating in trauma work with appropriate accommodations and adaptations. Therapies like EMDR, cognitive behavioral therapy, which are commonly used with non-disabled survivors of trauma, have been shown to be effective in addressing trauma in people with IDD as well. These treatments and others like them can lead to significant improvements in well-being and functioning. Social workers and other helping professionals need to better understand the intersection of IDD and disability so that we can more appropriately serve our clients and communities. We need humanizing, person-centered perspectives that challenge the legacy of institutionalization and provide alternatives to purely compliance-based practice. We also need to push back against ableism on a structural level. Disability justice, which advocates for anti-capitalist and community-centered approaches to building accessible futures, is one framework that shows promise for challenging systemic ableism on that macro level. Part of social work's ethical mandate is to promote the inherent dignity and worth of all persons, regardless of gender, color, creed, or ability. From that value, we lay groundwork for a just, compassionate, and supportive future for all survivors of trauma. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Ben. Again, we're getting such a great diversity of topics. We're seeing diversity in approach to slides as well. I'm really enjoying everyone's design approach and thinking about how they want to, again, visually complement what they're speaking about. It's great to see how everyone takes brings their own flavor and their own approach to things. Fantastic. Folks, we're down to the last two presenters for the evening. So we're closing in on a little bit of a break, a chance to stand up and stretch. I want to welcome Mahmoud Kohistani, a Durham GTA student studying child and youth studies. His topic, refugee youth participation, paving the path to an equitable education.
$36.5 million youth. That's the number of refugee youth globally. It's a daunting, scary number. These are children under the age of 18 who are already facing the hardships childhood brings, but facing the additional hardships of being a refugee. A refugee is someone who has fled their country due to war, persecution, or conflict. They face additional challenges such as integration, trauma, and language during their journey. Often these youth find solace in schooling as a means for participation and integration. It is important to highlight the word I just said, participation. What does that mean? The United Nations outlines that youth have the right to participate and their participation holds due weight. It essentially means that children have a say in matters relating to them. This is a universal right for all children. It is one of the many rights published by the United Nations that protects children. Participation, Article 12 of the treaty, allows individuals to cultivate their surroundings to support themselves best. Upholding this right is crucial for refugee youth, as they are often overlooked in the education system. Ask yourself, who can speak best on someone's story and needs than the person themselves? This is the foundation for my study. Researching to what extent refugee youth's participatory rights are conceptualized in education. Through analyzing pre-existing literature, focusing on ages 12 to 18, 3 themes emerged. The first theme was benefits. Refugee youth's input in their curricula allowed for materials that was best suited for them. Participation also cultivated a sense of belonging and connectedness with their peers, with their educators, and their learning. It contributed to a better overall academic performance in these youth. This is why participation is so vital. It promotes equitable education. This sounds great. We want our students to succeed, right? So why is this research being conducted? Well, the theme of barriers also emerged. Educators' biased views negated opportunities. Educators would often choose what they think is best for the youth, which cut refugee youth out of the picture. Research also pointed out to recommendations, such as clubs and educated personnel, as a means for encouraging participation. Asking teachers to know everything is cruel. Rather, they should just connect the youth to someone who is better suited to aid them. It's easy to stand here and criticize others, but we need to ask ourselves, what are we doing? As faculty and students, we can also do our part in educating ourselves and supporting these youth. 3 minutes is nowhere enough time to speak about the intricacies of this topic. The foundation of every state is its youth, and we must elevate those marginalized voices to best support them.
You're right, Emma. 3 minutes is not enough for any of us at all. But you covered a lot of good ground there. Absolutely, and I appreciate your call to action for us all as well. Our last speaker of the evening, not an easy task, thank you for waiting, is Lindsay Young, a Champlain College student studying psychology. Lindsay's title, The Deep End of the Dating Pool, Transgender Exclusion in Dating Sexual Activity.
It is with pride that countries such as Canada preach the notion that they are becoming more accepting and diverse in their populations, values and belief systems, and legislation. Despite this movement towards more liberal beliefs, marginalized individuals continue to face disparities. One example is the exclusion of transgender individuals in the world of sex and dating. Existing literature does show this exclusion of trans people in dating and sexual preferences. However, no research has yet to posit reasons for why. Working alongside Dr. Terry Humphreys in the Sexual Communication and Consent Lab, that is the question that I'm hoping to answer. Sexual script theory suggests that men and women are assigned roles for both dating and sexual contexts that they are socially expected to uphold. Trans people throw off heteronormative scripts, and men and women do not know the rules for engaging in sexual and dating activity with these individuals. I'm investigating 5 variables that could explain sexual script flexibility and people's likelihood to exclude transgender people. Sociosexuality may explain some exclusion, as those low in sociosexuality are more conservative in their sexual preferences. Those who struggle with sexual communication may also exclude, as they do not have the skills to renegotiate their scripts. Gender dysphoria, which is the feeling of incongruence between one's gender assigned at birth and their gender expression, may also explain some exclusion. Transgender individuals may be avoiding sexual and dating activity due to the discomfort of having to renegotiate scripts. Lastly, openness and homonegativity may explain some exclusion, as both variables relate to acceptance of trans individuals in multiple facets of life, which would greatly influence one's willingness to rework their sexual scripts. Using a questionnaire format, undergraduate psychology students were asked to rate how likely they are to date and engage in sexual activity with several different gender identities. Additionally, they filled out questionnaires pertaining to the 5 variables explained. Data collection and analysis have not yet been completed. However, results appear to be supporting the following hypothesis. If an individual has knowledge of gender dysphoria, increased openness, increased sociosexuality, and increased sexual communication skills, paired with lower homonegativity scores, they are less likely to have excluded transgender identities on that scale. Although it is certainly not that easy to explain the continued discrimination against transgender individuals, I am only an undergraduate student after all, the current study does hope to shed some light on the factors adding to exclusion. If we can learn how these factors have become exclusionary, my hope is that we can rewrite and normalize transgender individuals into the sexual script. Thank you.
Thank you, Lindsay. Not easy to be sitting there waiting patiently as you listen and appreciate everyone else's talk, but you were fantastic out there. And that comes to the end of the presentations. We just learned 14 new research projects, new ideas in 2,520 seconds, if we look at 180 seconds each. So please join me in applause to acknowledge the work of all of these bright students. They are so impressive, and their work demonstrates the value and the breadth of undergraduate research here. So we'll let the judges finish up some of their work. You have work as well. You should have received a ballot with your program, and if you didn't, we have volunteers that will be around to make sure that you have a ballot. We also have pencils available if you need a writing implement. So you can select your favorite from tonight's speakers. We encourage you to really think about who you feel met that criteria. But note that you can only vote for one. They were all amazing. I wish we could give them all a prize, but pick one, please. And once you have done that, you can bring your ballot to our volunteers. They'll collect them. We'll count them up. And during that time when we're pulling scores together, counting ballots, we invite you to work your way to the Ernest and Florence Benedict gathering space just next door here. We have some refreshments. The participants can have a chance to breathe and take a moment and talk to your people that might be here. Folks, if you have questions of them, I think they're up to talk about the research clearly. So ask them some questions. Tell them how much you enjoyed the presentation. And we'll come back here. What time are we at? It is 8:10. So let's say we'll start making our way back here at 8:30 so we can present prizes. Thank you so much. Wonderful. I got the all clear. You've all made your way back in. You didn't get lost. Thank you for returning. The energy seems different over in this area of the room than it did earlier today. But I love that you're all sharing and enjoying the moment. So thank you. Just a reminder again, if you really enjoyed 3-minute paper, you're going to also like 3-minute thesis. So join us, open to the public, Thursday, April 13th, 7 p.m. at Market Hall. That's when the graduate students present their 3-minute talk. They're not allowed to have notes. They only get one slide. So I hope that makes you think, oh, wow, we were lucky. Wow. So come and enjoy. Hopefully you'll be done exams and final papers as well. So should I keep stalling? I had an elementary school principal who used to kind of stall while we got to the prizes and we'd all just be antsy. No? Okay, we'll keep going then. We have Marilyn Bergs returning to the podium. She's VP Enrollment and Communications, and Marilyn will be presenting the Audience Choice Award first.
Okay, didn't I tell you were going to be amazed? And didn't I tell you that it was going to be so hard to be the judges in this? I'm very excited to present these awards, but I would like to just make a couple of summary comments to say we have been humbled by your confidence and by your creativity. We are so impressed with your deep questions, with your attention to detail. We have been changed by the terms we've learned, the titles, everything that you've said, and we've been challenged by the conclusions that you've come to and the questions that you've left us asking and the things that you've said you wanted to delve deeper into. And I think this is a very good example of what we do so well at Trent. And there is one group that I didn't really acknowledge earlier, which is the faculty. The faculty who are here tonight to support their students. This is their work in action. They are committed teachers, they're expert researchers, and they bring all of that into the learning experience for undergraduates in a way that many other institutions do not do. And the excellence you've shown tonight as students and undergrads has really blown us away. But I do want to make that connection back to the faculty who've made that happen. So maybe we can have a round of applause for our faculty. We always say at Trent, challenge the way you think. You've done that for us. I want to quote one of the students tonight who said, "I'm only an undergraduate student after all." And I thought that was such a great quote because I kept thinking, they're undergrads, they're so good. So I'm very happy to have the honor of presenting the 3-minute paper competition Audience Choice Prize for 2023. And this is, I guess all of us voted on this, and the winner is Daya Shah. I don't have your topic at hand, but I remember it well, so congratulations. The prize is somewhere, you will get it. The next prize, and I will get away from this mic because it's too tempting to keep talking. The Best Visual Aids Prize for 2023 for the 3-minute paper goes to Lindsay Young. Just remember that.
Excellent. And I should mention that we don't have big checks here, I'm sorry, but we have Rachel here, and Rachel will make sure all the payments, prize arrangements happen, certainly. I also was chatting with one of the students, and I want you to know that this is also something that looks great on your applications, your resumes, and on your co-curricular record. So certainly make sure you go into the student experience portal and add this to your co-curricular record, because again, this was so much time and effort and energy and commitment, and it was evident on the floor, absolutely. I now would like to invite Hannah McCannon, the editor-in-chief of the Journal of Undergraduate Studies at Trent. Hannah will be presenting the Social Justice Prize for 2023.
Hi there. We here at Just really do value and cherish the work of undergraduate students and think that there's so much there, so much potential, and want to really encourage everyone, especially undergraduates, to continue to pursue their academic work and feel like it matters. And so part of that with the prize we have sponsored is the Justice Prize, so the Social Justice Prize. We really do believe undergraduate students have the ability to communicate new ideas about social justice work, which is incredibly valuable. So I'd like to congratulate Mahmood Koistani for the 3-minute presentation.
Thank you, Hannah. Congratulations. I next will ask Professor Fergal Hagen, Associate Dean of Teaching and Learning, to present the second runner-up prize.
Thanks, and I'd just like to echo Marilyn's comments. I've been at Trent just about 20 years, and I am continually amazed with the quality of the undergrad research here. As somebody who didn't get that sort of opportunity as an undergrad, I think that you guys, just hats off to you. You do such a fine job. So I'm really pleased to present the second runner-up prize on behalf of the Center for Teaching and Learning at Trent. And the winner is Abby Politeski. E-transfers in the middle.
Thank you for that. I'll next ask up Babin Joy from Alumni Engagement Services to present the first runner-up prize sponsored by Alumni Services and Engagement.
Thanks, Ryan. I joined Trent just before the pandemic, so I haven't had the chance to attend in-person events. So this has been such a joy to be here, and that's my last name. And all your research and was so well done today. It was quality research, and you presented such an eloquent way. So congratulations to all of you. I'm here to award the first runner-up, and the award goes to Lindsay Young.
Thank you, Gavin. Congratulations, Lindsay. And what we've all been waiting for, the overall prize, which is sponsored by the Office of Research and Innovation. This prize will be presented by Dr. Sean Wood, who is also our judge this evening.
Let me start by saying I haven't used a microphone in a long time. I'm from the Office of Research and Innovation, and it's my job really to sort of help faculty members, students present their research in a way that appeals to a broad audience. And I think you all did a fantastic job. And I suspect that someday I will probably be working with some of you as faculty members, putting in your last-minute grant applications. So make friends with me now, because you're going to need me later. So I'm very pleased on behalf of the Office of Research and Innovation to present the prize, the overall winner of the 2023 3-minute paper competition, to Dia Shaw.
Thank you, Sean. Congratulations, Dia. Congratulations to you all. This is such a fantastic event, and I really want to express my gratitude to so many folks. I think we have to first start by thanking the participants. Your hard work was really evident in these engaging and informative talks, and we know you took a lot of time to prepare and practice during a really busy time of the year. And for many of you, this is also your final term at Trent, so it matters. We appreciate the work and the lessons that you gave us this evening. And I just want to ask that, don't rush out. You can stick back for a picture or two after. We'd really appreciate it. And we think you are all winners. You are all amazing. So let's give it up for yourself. I also want to offer thanks to all of our award presenters this evening, and huge gratitude to Carlene and Sean and Michael for offering your time and your attention to these fantastic presentations. We really appreciate the work of you all, so thank you. And they let me be the face and the voice up here, and I'm sorry about that. But I have to thank all of my colleagues from both academic skills and from Autonomy College, including all of the fantastic students that offered support for this evening, and our 3MP coordinating committee, including Alia Abuka, OC Assistant Rachel Bobchesky, and OC Principal Jessica Beck. So thank you, folks, for making this event happen yet again in person. And folks, thank you for coming out and supporting your friends, your students, random folks you don't know, but you just thought this sounded really interesting. We so appreciate you coming, supporting these amazing students, and we hope that this sparks more conversations in the near future for you all. So this concludes our evening, and we thank you for coming. We wish you well.